the show begin. Next generation for the win. We're going all in. All together now, let's begin. Let the show begin.
So each year, the Phocuswright analyst team makes some predictions on what the year will have in store. And the PhocusWire editorial team will reach out to the industry and ask key leaders about their predictions for 2024. And as an industry intelligence company, it's important that we reflect back on where we thought the industry was headed to analyze where we are at the current, and then we can look into the future and better predict what we're likely to see as we enter this next generation. So how did we do? Gary Bowerman, our lead analyst for Asia Pacific, noted that Northeast Asia and Southeast Asia will hope for a China outbound rebound to bolster recovery. Well, the China outbound unleashing was not fully in the cards this year. While the market did achieve 18% growth, international outbound is only projected to achieve 130 million travelers by the end of the year, which represents 84% of pre-pandemic. And our 2024 projections has China still not fully recovered prior to pre-pandemic levels. Gary Anconi, who's here in the audience today, our research manager, identified correctly that India would be a key market to watch and the top inbound source market for many countries, and that's growing. Reflective of this, India Airlines currently have an order book of 1,620 aircraft. Kappa India projects over 50 million annual departures by fiscal year 2030. Hotel distribution always remains a hot topic in our industry. Norm Rose, our senior technology analyst, predicted that hotels will gain some control over their distribution and expand attribute-based selling through APIs and bypass the GDS. As we can see, this is not fully the case globally, as OTAs have a stranglehold on distribution in the highly fragmented hotel markets of Asia Pacific, Eastern Europe, and the Middle East. The Western markets, where the chains have more control, suppliers are having more success distributing direct. However, OTAs still control nearly 2/3 of hotel distribution globally. We also predicted investments in generative AI will gather pace. Online travel agencies and Meta will focus on adding and enhancing traveler-facing features and technology. Automation as well. Automation in business operations will pick up speed, and simple autonomous agents will start to have impact on workflows. Mike Coletta, our manager of research and innovation, predicted digital ID and biometric solutions will roll out across many destinations, airports, cruise lines, and other tourism businesses. I still think we're early in the process there. Our collective research team identified these key 6 overarching technology and innovation trends that would impact the market in 2024. From digital currency to autonomous agents to Gen AI, self-sovereign ID to sustainability tech to AR, VR, and Web3 tech, these are the technology trends that we are keeping a close eye on and are in various stages of impact on our industry. So Linda, how did the industry leaders do with their predictions for 2024?
Thanks, Pete. We have some obvious headline grabbers so far this year. The departure of Expedia's CTO, the relaunch of Airbnb Experiences, and Booking.com abandoning its own sustainability program. But actually, once you get past those headlines, you get to the PhocusWire stories that really seem to matter to readers on a business level. And these are the stories that they spend time on. They're sharing them. They're discussing them on LinkedIn and other platforms. So what are those themes? Well, it's AI, obviously. But it's much more about how AI affects processes such as revenue management within their businesses. And you can see that from the 2 hotel stories that you have on the screens behind me. I've got them in front of me as well. The Marriott story is kind of interesting because they've come up with this strategy to combine the job functions of revenue management and chief technology officer because they want to break down the silos within those job roles. And those silos are something that everyone in this room, I think, will have encountered, familiar with in some way. On a basic level, to use data in a meaningful way, you have to be able to access it. And bigger than that, as you can see from the slide, is how AI will affect the whole digital marketing landscape, which is in the midst of this massive upheaval right now. It's not the neat box that it used to be. It's no secret that the big players want to reduce their billion-dollar reliance on Google. It's a feature of most of their quarterly earnings these days. And they continue to invest heavily in their own channels, loyalty programs. They're also talking about the increasing influence of social media, such as TikTok, and the resources that they're already investing there. And it's important to point out right now that 2 of the pieces that we have up here are contributed by industry experts. Christian Watts, who's in the room, Magpie, and Mario Guevara of Kiwi. And as much as PhocusWire appreciates their input, their contributions from the industry's perspective and our readers' perspective are invaluable. But to bring things up to the here and now, there's no doubt that AI and data themes will continue to attract huge attention. And these themes, they cut across every segment of travel. PhocusWire's most popular story last week discussed how search platforms may change travel marketing. And why do I mention that? I think this quote from Mario Guevara kind of sums it up. When the whole ChatGPT thing exploded, I was very bullish. That this would be a massive disruptor because users would be so excited. In fact, it didn't move the needle at all, or if it moved it, it was marginal. And I would only add to that, yet.
So Sean, let's bring you into the conversation here. So tell us a little bit about your business and also share with us what your data says about some of these trends that we're talking about here today.
Yeah, so at Lighthouse, we are a data and technology platform. At our very core, we're also an AI platform. And essentially, we help hotels generate more revenues. So we do that through better pricing, better promotion of their products, and also we evaluate distribution as well. I think overall, we have access to close to 400,000 hotels worldwide. So we have a very broad lens in terms of what's happening within the industry. And sort of below the next level of detail, there's actually a pretty consistent trend, which is, as we've come into 24, the start of the year continued to be strong relative to the prior year. But I think as interest rates have generally bitten a little bit, you're starting to see a slight slowdown. And that's how I would describe it, because when we look through to the projections of 25, we're still seeing pretty robust demand as it relates to 2019. So I would say as we talk to our hotel partners, it's mostly about cautious optimism, but obviously concerned about maybe year-over-year compares as they're looking back on what has been an amazing year in 23 and 24.
So how about shifting to some regions close to this audience's heart, so Asia Pacific. So what are we seeing here? And I talked a little bit about the China story. We were pretty bullish that China was going to experience a stronger international outbound recovery, but that didn't fully come to fruition. So what is your data showing here?
Yeah, so we pulled together a whole universe of data to try and get a complete view of what's happening within certain markets. So we look at flight search data, we look at traveler search data as it relates to OTAs, meta search providers, brand.com. And generally, I think what you're looking at here is obviously China has been slower to recover, but a very sort of fast recovery that's outstripped the other markets, in particular India, Japan, South Korea. And you can see kind of the relative activity within those markets. But back to your point, what we're seeing is that demand is essentially being captured domestically, right? So there is travel happening within China. It's just tending to be within China, and we're not quite seeing that translate into international travel just yet.
And the big jump it looks like between June and July in 23, that had an impact on all markets, right?
Absolutely, yeah. And so again, what you're looking at here is search data. So if you sort of overlaid the sort of say hotels booking data as an example, you'd start to see sort of that trend pick up maybe a quarter or maybe 3 to 4 months beyond the actual flight search activity itself.
So as far as pricing recovery goes, I think China's an interesting market. We'll look at India here in a little bit. Can you talk about what you're seeing in China specifically for pricing?
Yeah, look, I think again, it's pretty consistent in terms of how you see the demand sort of curve recover. everybody saw that phenomenal recovery from 22 into 23 as that kind of revenge travel kicked in, and there was just a huge pent-up demand. And the way we view rates as a sort of a proxy for demand, you can generally see prices increase as supply is contracting, right? And so that's essentially a good way of trying to understand how maybe your publicly available rates can indicate what's happening within a market. So you can see it here, right? So very consistent, strong demand through 23, and then as you sort of get towards the end of the year, the average rates are dropping ever so slightly as maybe demand is softening a little bit.
Are we seeing that same sort of picture here in Singapore? I presume not. We're all paying a lot of money to stay here at the hotels in this market.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you have markets like Singapore that are, I wouldn't quite say sort of, recession-proof, but they have a very consistent demand pattern because of just the sort of the mix of traveler that's arriving at a destination like this.
All right, let's shift to India, which I think is an interesting story. And again, it's a prediction that we made that India was really going to take off, and I think we're starting to see that, and this slide indicates as much.
Yeah, very much so. And again, I think congratulations to the work that you do, because you were spot on in some of your trends, and you can see it here in the data. I mean, I think what this is telling you is that the rates are gradually and consistently increasing month over month, which would suggest very robust and sustainable demand, at least for the next 3-4 quarters.
Linda?
Yeah, so just wanted to shift back to technology and specifically AI, Sean, for a few minutes. How would you say that AI is impacting your customers? That they're not traditionally rapid adopters of new technology. So what are you seeing there?
Yeah, look, I think it's very segment specific. So obviously in the chains, they've been using, revenue management systems and predictive AI for some time, but generally, and I don't want to get into specifics, but the way that it's done is they take a hotel's historic performance, they build a regression-based forecast, and then they essentially set their pricing accordingly. There's a whole universe of data out there in terms of being able to understand demand, which is really how Lighthouse is thinking about it, whether it is traveler search, flight search, in addition to obviously how the hotels themselves are performing. And so I would say 2 trends. One is just that, right? An understanding that actually demand is far more dynamic now, and you need a bigger universe of data to be able to understand where it's coming from, the shape of that demand, and how to capture it. And then the second part is, I think, more of a willingness to adopt technology within the independent space. We're seeing a very rapid pickup in terms of our tools and our technology that are designed to be very simple for independent hoteliers, but there's just much more of a willingness, because I think whether it's the headlines around AI or just a better understanding of how technology can help with some pretty fundamental decisions, we're seeing that accelerate.
So are you optimistic that 63% of respondents use AI in some form? Or are you like throwing up your hands and saying 37% aren't using it at all?
I would say that, so this is a survey we ran just in recent months. We had a few thousand respondents to it. And I think that's probably capturing everything from ChatGPT to answer a question all the way through a revenue management system to optimize their pricing. I would say if you just look at the hotel industry in general and you take 1 million as being the sort of the top line number for hotels worldwide, there's probably about 50 to 60,000 that are actually using a revenue management system. And you would be surprised there are still global chain and chain hotels that don't have that level of AI.
So let's shift to this divide. Obviously, the chains tend to be the ones that have at least the means and the resources to really start implementing this new technology. Marriott's spending a ton of money on a replatforming of their technology, and there's lots of discussions about how they're using AI. What is this challenge and opportunity here? And you speak about the size or the number of hotels globally. A lot of them are independents.
Yeah. No, I mean, look, I think probably the most important thing, and a lot of the speakers have hit on this through the course of today, like AI can be a slightly intimidating topic, right? Because it's essentially something that has captured the imagination of the general public. But when you look at it within the context of a hotel, there are fantastic tools that independent hoteliers in particular can access that maybe up until 2-3 years ago would have been exclusively accessible through the chains. And so that kind of acceleration is happening. And I think we probably all saw the sort of the rocket, right, that was captured by the SpaceX rocket captured by the arm, and that was amazing, right? And if you think about what was happening, you essentially have this rocket that is sort of careering out of the sky, and it's got these little boosters that are calibrating constantly to try and ensure the perfect landing, right? And so there's nobody flying that rocket. I mean, that's essentially a set of machines or algorithms that are optimizing. And if you think about a hotel, right, so they have a perishable product that every night that product expires every time there's an empty room. And really, for the price of a room, right, they can adopt a system that ultimately helps them calibrate that perfect landing every night. And so that's the best way I could, sort of try and explain it to a hotelier. You're trying to catch that rocket every single night. And so I would imagine in 3 to 5 years' time, it's going to be impossible for a hotel, whether it's a chain or an independent, to be operating without some form of AI to help assist them in their decision-making.
I experienced something similar at iFly Singapore last night. After we all, experienced our flight, the instructor is doing twists and somersaults, and he does a backflip and lands right on his feet, right out the exit door. So while not AI generated, it's translating to humans as well. So let's talk about the future. So let's get into some future predictions. We've got about a couple of minutes left. As the great scientist Albert Einstein once said, the human spirit must prevail over technology. With all due respect to Mr. Einstein, technology doesn't seem to be crushing the human spirit in our industry. Technology is helping to free up and enable the human spirit to grow and shine by experiencing the various cultures of the world through travel. So as we can see in this chart, technology continues to have an outside impact on the industry. Phocuswright predicts that digital channels will continue to capture the share from offline channels as we look into the future. And of course, Asia Pacific is leading the way as we usher in this new generation of travel. And more travelers are embracing technology and digital channels as we move forward. Linda?
Yeah, I'll be super quick here. All of the OTAs, their CEOs in their quarterly earnings are talking about how much more attention they're paying to social media, to their loyalty channels, to their direct channels, and how much they would like to reduce their Google habit. So, we'll be watching this really, really carefully, and I want to see how that investment in social media starts paying off. Perhaps the commerce media side, those media networks that they're all building is going to start paying off, and that's what we'll be watching in the months ahead. And over to you, Sean.
Yeah, look, I think just to wrap up, I mean, as I said, look, for those hoteliers who are considering investments in AI, I would certainly look at the commercial stack first and foremost. It's where you'll get the greatest return on investment as it relates to starting those early projects. And the second thing is it's incredibly affordable. For the price of literally a room night a night, you can start to engage with and leverage some of this technology. I'm slightly biased towards Lighthouse, so by all means, start with us. But it's an amazing opportunity, and it is an amazing time for hoteliers to take a little bit of that control back, a little bit more of that decision-making that ultimately will benefit their business.
So I suspect that we will continue to talk a lot about AI here as we move forward. Hopeful that we'll start to see more and more embracing of that technology. We talked a lot about it last night at the think tank, some of the challenges of the technology, as well as some of the opportunities. So I think that's something that we're all following here as we're moving into the future. So thank you very much, Linda and Sean.
Thank you.
And right there